A man is now in custody for a decades-old cold case in Stockton. Police say 80-year-old Donald Clark killed two people in 1994. Officers responded to an assault around 3 in the morning on May 23rd, finding Eugene Cates and Loehr dead. A cold case team recently identified Clark as the suspect in the murders, and he was arrested yesterday in Stockton.
Today, we are here to share justice that has been 32 years in the making. For over 3 decades, the murders of Larry Loehr, and Eugene Cates have weighed heavily on the hearts of Stockton.
Imagine a late May night in Stockton, California. The Spanos Park construction site on Thornton Road, dark, quiet, with only the sound of the wind and streetlights. A 23-year-old young man was sitting on night duty inside the security office trailer. His childhood best friend had just finished his shift at a nearby gas station and stopped by to visit before heading home. 2 friends, an ordinary night. Then, at 3 a.m., a call came into the Stockton Police Department reporting an assault. When police arrived, the chain-link fence had been smashed open by a car. Inside the trailer, Lawrence Loehr was tied up, gagged with a cloth, and shot once in the back of the head. Outside the fence, Eugene Cates lay under a pile of scrap metal. This is not a story about a robbery or a personal dispute. This is the story of 2 childhood best friends who studied criminal justice together, dreamed of wearing police uniforms together, and were killed by a man who, after setting the car on fire to destroy evidence, returned to live a normal life in Stockton for the next 32 years. During those 32 years, the people who loved Larry and Peanut aged, passed away, and waited in silence. And it took 3 decades, a DNA lab in Texas, and a 32-year-old genetic sample for the answer to finally be pulled out of the shadows. But let's go back to where it all began. In 1994, America was immersed in grunge music from Seattle. Kurt Cobain had died, O.J. Simpson had just been arrested in the trial of the century, and the first personal computers were starting to appear in middle-class living rooms. A year when America was changing rapidly. In Stockton, California, an industrial city deep in the Central Valley, less than 2 hours' drive from San Francisco, where flat fields stretched to the horizon and modest neighborhoods crowded together. This was where Larry Loehr and Peanut Cates grew up, where they went to school together, where they nurtured the same dream, and where they died on a late May night in 1994 for reasons no one could explain. Larry Loehr, 23, was engaged to Monica Granados, the woman he planned to marry, the woman he cooked for and cleaned for every day. Monica spoke about Larry 32 years after his death, her voice unchanged. Larry was a good guy, the biggest heart ever, cooked, cleaned, took care of kids and then some. This was not supposed to happen. Larry studied criminal justice at San Joaquin Delta College because that was what he wanted to do with his life, become a Stockton police officer. He had passed the Stockton Police Department entrance exam and was waiting to start the training program. On the night of May 23, 1994, Larry was working the night shift as security at the Spanos Park construction site on Thornton Road, a part-time job for extra income, just like any other shift. Eugene Cates, whom the whole neighborhood affectionately called Uncle Peanut since he was a child, was also 23, also engaged, and also studying criminal justice at San Joaquin Delta College, the same school and same major as Larry. Peanut had just passed the California State Correctional Officer exam and was awaiting a background check for his first assignment. His niece Joni Morrow said of him, "He was becoming a man. His whole dream was just taken. All he wanted to do was do good." On the night of May 23rd, Peanut had just finished his shift at the Chevron gas station on Benjamin Holt Drive. He stopped by to visit his best friend on night duty before heading home, as he often did. The two had been friends since childhood, growing up on the ordinary streets of Stockton, and had both decided to study criminal justice, and both passed the exams. Larry was headed for the Stockton Police Department, Peanut for the state prison system. Cates' sister, Donna Whitlatch, said both shared the same childhood dream, protecting others, wearing the uniform, doing the right thing. They studied to protect others. They passed the tests. They were waiting to begin. And they were killed by a man for no clear reason before they could wear the uniform for the first time. The night of May 23, 1994, was nothing unusual. It was just two friends and a stranger whose name would only be known 32 years later. In the early morning hours of May 23, 1994, between around 1 a.m. and nearly 3 a.m., the Stockton Police Department received a report of an assault in the 10,000 block of Thornton Road, the Spanos Park construction site, south of Bear Creek High School, an area that was completely dark and deserted at that hour. There were no witnesses, no passers-by. No one saw anything. When police arrived, the first thing they saw was the chain-link fence surrounding the security office trailer area smashed open. A car had rammed straight through with enough force to bring the entire fence down. Inside the trailer, Larry Loehr lay there, tied up, gagged with a cloth, shot once in the back of the head. He was killed right inside the trailer where he was on security duty. The manner in which Larry was killed, tied up, gagged, and shot in the back of the head, was controlled, the work of someone who knew what they were doing and was not in a hurry. There were no signs of major struggle inside the trailer, not much furniture disturbed, no signs of a prolonged fight, meaning the attacker had overpowered Larry quickly or approached him in a way that Larry couldn't react in time. Outside the trailer, under the crushed pile of chain-link fence, Eugene Cates. The way Peanut died was completely different from Larry's, stabbed and run over by a vehicle. Initially, police could not immediately determine the exact cause of death until the autopsy results. The location where Cates' body was found, outside the trailer, under the smashed fence, suggested he was outside when the car came through, or was trying to escape when the incident happened inside. The difference in how the two men died raised questions about what actually happened that night that were never fully answered. Where was Peanut when Larry was attacked inside the trailer? Did he hear anything? Did he try to run out, or had he been outside already and was stabbed and then run over as the attacker fled? The two died on the same night, at the same location, but not in the same way, and the gap between their deaths was never filled. The car used to smash through the fence and flee was Eugene Cates' own vehicle. The killer of the two friends had taken one of the victims' cars to escape. A few hours later, police found the car about 3 miles from the scene, abandoned on the side of the road and set on fire. Nothing was taken from the construction site. No cash, no equipment, no belongings of either victim were missing. Robbery was ruled out completely in the first few hours of the investigation. The person who burned the car was not panicked. After killing the two men, he was calm enough to take the victim's car, drive it 3 miles, find a quiet spot, and set it on fire, erasing fingerprints, erasing contact evidence, erasing anything that could lead back to him. That was the action of someone who had thought about the consequences, and the question that Stockton PD would carry for 32 years without an answer. Why this construction site? Why that night? Why these two men, who didn't know him, had no conflict with him, and had nothing worth killing for? Who was this person? Stockton PD collected forensic evidence from the scene, biological samples, contact traces, everything they could gather that night, packaged, labeled, and preserved. In the following days, detectives began interviews, construction workers at Spanos Park, neighbors in the Thornton Road area, Larry's colleagues on other security shifts, employees at the Chevron station where Peanut had just finished work, anyone who might have seen anything unusual on the night of May 23 or in the days leading up to it. They made lists of people who had been in and out of the construction site recently. They checked whether Larry and Peanut had any conflicts with anyone, at school, in the neighborhood, at work. They spoke with family, friends, and acquaintances of both. The answer they received in every direction was the same. Larry and Peanut had no enemies. No one had any reason to kill them. Forensic evidence was collected and preserved, but in 1994, DNA technology was not advanced enough to analyze the type of samples police obtained from the scene. The initial investigation yielded nothing to go on. No direct witnesses, no security cameras in the construction site area at midnight, no one who saw Cates' car before or after it was burned. And most importantly, there was no connection between the perpetrator and Larry Loehr, Eugene Cates, or the Spanos Park construction site. No conflict, no enemies. San Joaquin County Prosecutor Ron Freitas later confirmed that the complete absence of any link between the perpetrator and the victims was the reason the case remained stalled for 32 years. With no thread to pull, there was no direction to follow. The case gradually became a cold case, with no major media campaign and no one prominent or resourced enough to stand in front of cameras to fight publicly. The two families waited in silence. Monica Granados, Larry's fiancée, the woman who waited for him to come home that night, lived with the unanswered question for 32 years. She said later, "It's not fair at all. Life has been rough. Larry was a good guy. This was not supposed to happen." Donna Whitlatch, Eugene Cates' sister, watched her parents pass away one by one without ever knowing who killed their son. Her mother died before the killer was caught. Her father died around 2022. Donna said of her mother, "That was her baby. She passed away without an answer." But Stockton PD never closed the file. The evidence collected from the 1994 scene was kept, preserved, and passed on through generations of detectives, each one taking over the case, looking at the file, and knowing the answer was somewhere in that pile of evidence if the technology ever became strong enough to read it. Lawrence Loehr and Eugene Cates were buried next to each other in Loehr, San Joaquin County, two childhood best friends with the same dream who died on the same night, now lying next to each other. In 2025, Stockton PD and the San Joaquin County DA's office sent evidence to Othram, a specialized DNA laboratory in the Woodlands, Texas. In September 2025, the Cold Case Task Force officially submitted samples from the original 1994 file to Othram for testing. The technical challenge was real. The DNA collected from the scene had undergone 31 years of degradation, with extremely small amounts remaining and quality so poor that ordinary forensic labs could not process it. Othram used forensic-grade genome sequencing, a new generation of gene sequencing technology capable of building a comprehensive SNP profile from sub-nanogram sample amounts. This technology did not exist in 1994, did not exist in 2000, did not exist in 2010, and its existence in 2025 was the only reason the case was solved. From those samples, Othram built a complete genetic profile of the suspect. Othram's forensic genetic genealogy team searched commercial genealogy databases, platforms where millions of ordinary Americans had voluntarily submitted their DNA to learn about their ancestry. The process involved multiple steps: finding distant relatives of the suspect in the database, building family trees from those matches, eliminating individuals who didn't fit by age, gender, geography, and gradually narrowing the list until one name remained: Donald Lee Clark, an 80-year-old Stockton resident. With Clark's name in hand, the San Joaquin County Cold Case Task Force and the California DOJ Bureau of Forensic Services moved to forensic confirmation. They needed a direct reference DNA sample from Clark to compare with the 1994 scene profile. According to public information, investigators obtained a DNA sample from Clark. The specific method was not publicly disclosed, a detail typically kept confidential during the pretrial phase to avoid affecting the legal process. The comparison results confirmed that Clark was the person who left DNA at the Spanos Park construction site on the night of May 23, 1994. With that result, an arrest warrant was issued. On April 25, 2026, members of the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force located Clark at his home in Stockton, the same city where Larry and Peanut were killed 32 years earlier. Clark was arrested at his home and booked into the San Joaquin County Jail on 2 counts of homicide. The same day, San Joaquin County DA Ron Freitas notified the victims' families. 32 years after the night of May 23, 1994, the question that Stockton PD had carried through generations of detectives finally had someone to answer it. Donald Lee Clark, 80 years old, a Stockton resident. In 1994, when Larry Loehr and Eugene Cates were killed at the Spanos Park construction site, Clark was 48. Not an impulsive young man, not a novice criminal, but a middle-aged man who had lived long enough to know the consequences of his actions. After that night, Clark did not flee. He did not change his identity. He did not leave Stockton. He continued living in the same city, walking the same streets, while Larry and Peanut lay next to each other in the Loehr cemetery, and the two families waited for an answer that never came. Throughout the 32-year investigation, Clark was never on any detective's radar, never interviewed, never placed on a suspect list, never mentioned in any lead. Not because he was especially skilled at hiding, but because there was no thread connecting him to the crime, no link between him and the two victims or the construction site, and no technology at the time that could find him from the evidence at the scene. Until DNA did exactly that in 2025. Robbery had been ruled out in the first hours of the investigation. Nothing was taken from the site, no belongings of the two victims were missing, no personal conflicts were found between Clark and Larry or Peanut. The three had never met before the night of May 23, 1994. Prosecutor Freitas confirmed that Clark had no connection to the construction site or the victims. But that is all that has been publicly confirmed. The questions of why Clark was there at 3 a.m., why he attacked two complete strangers, and whether this was the first time he had done something like this, those questions have not yet received any public answers. On April 24, 2026, 2 days after his arrest, Clark appeared in San Joaquin County Superior Court, sitting in a wheelchair, wearing orange jail scrubs. The judge read the charges, 2 counts of murder with special circumstance allegations for multiple murders. Clark pleaded not guilty. He was assigned a public defender. Bail was denied. If convicted, he could face the death penalty or life in prison without parole. But California has had a moratorium on executions since 2019, and an 80-year-old man in a wheelchair for a crime committed 32 years earlier raises legal questions the system has not yet answered. As of June 2026, the case is in the pre-trial phase, with no verdict and no official trial date set. When news of the arrest broke on April 26, 2026, Monica Granados, the woman who had waited for this answer since she was a young woman engaged to Larry Loehr, told reporters in the voice of someone who had carried that pain for too long. "It's not fair at all. Life has been rough. Larry was a good guy, the biggest heart ever. This was not supposed to happen," she added. "We all waited for this moment. It's a long time coming. I hope justice is swift with it, as swiftly as they took their lives." Donna Whitlatch, Eugene Cates' sister, said, "I miss him. I'd give my life for him if I could bring him back." Niece Joni Morrow, who grew up with stories about an uncle she never really knew, said, "It's definitely going to be an emotional journey, but we're dedicated. We're going to be there every step of the way." On April 24, 2026, the two families sat together in the San Joaquin County Superior Court courtroom, just as their two friends had been buried next to each other in Loehr more than 3 decades earlier. But among all the people who had waited for this day, there were those who did not live to see it. Eugene Cates' mother passed away before April 25, 2026, never knowing who killed her son. Cates' father died around 2022, 4 years before Clark was arrested, 4 years before the question he carried his whole life had an answer. Donna Whitlatch said of her mother, "That was her baby. She passed away without an answer, without knowing the name of the person who took away the child she loved most." Larry Loehr's parents were also gone. This is the real cost of 32 years of deadlock. Not just time, but specific people who grew old, got sick, and died in uncertainty. People who left this world with the biggest question of their lives still hanging unanswered. At the press conference on April 24, District Attorney Ron Freitas stood in front of the courthouse and told the victims' families, "To the families of Eugene and Larry, we know that 32 years is an agonizing long time to wait for this day. Justice may have been delayed, but it was never forgotten. We hope today marks the beginning of the closure you have so long looked for." The case still lies ahead. A verdict has not yet been reached, and the questions of why still have no answers. The forensic evidence collected from the Spanos Park construction site in the early morning of May 23, 1994, was packaged and labeled. The decision to preserve that evidence through generations of detectives, through many file transfers, and that very decision made all the difference. Uthram and forensic-grade genome sequencing are changing the way cold cases are solved across America. Hundreds of similar cases are being reopened, files sitting quietly in cabinets, evidence that once seemed useless because it was too old, too little, too degraded. The message of this case is that DNA evidence does not expire if properly preserved, and technology does not stand still waiting for crimes to be forgotten. Criminals who believe time is on their side, that 10 years, 20 years, 32 years is enough to erase all traces. The case of Lawrence Loehr and Eugene Cates is the clearest proof to refute that. Donald Lee Clark lived normally in Stockton for 32 years, and DNA found him. As of June 2026, Clark has not pleaded guilty, has not been sentenced, and no official trial date has been set. This is not a tidy ending with a verdict rendered and full justice served. This is justice within reach, but not yet in hand. The case of Lawrence Loehr and Eugene Cates leaves behind real lessons that anyone living in America should know. First, if you work in an isolated environment, night security, construction sites, warehouses, empty parking lots, establish a check-in system with family or coworkers. Larry Loehr worked night shifts alone at a dark and deserted construction site. No cameras, no coworkers. No one knew what was happening until it was too late. Today, a simple text message saying, "I'm starting my shift and I finished my shift safely," can make all the difference. Second, if you are a business owner or contractor using night security at construction sites or isolated areas, invest in security cameras and emergency communication systems. In 1994, there were no cameras at the Spanos Park construction site. No footage, no witnesses, nothing for police to follow. Third, this case is direct proof of the power of preserving evidence. If you are a law enforcement officer or work in the justice system, never discard evidence from an unsolved case. The DNA technology of 2025 did not exist in 1994, and the technology of 2035 will be able to do things that 2025 cannot yet do. Fourth, if you have a loved one who was killed and the case remains unsolved, contact the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children at missingkids.org or the Cobb County Cold Case Unit to learn about genetic genealogy support programs. Many nonprofit organizations provide this service free of charge to victims' families. If Larry and Peanut's story touched you, please hit subscribe so you don't miss the next cold cases. Every subscription helps stories like this continue to be told. Thank you for following until the end. See you in the next case.